Groove Armada on Radio 3. And my friend here in Hong Kong, it's 12 minutes past 12 and it's Tuesday afternoon. That means if you have a moment and you'd like to see and join in, if you like, with Morris Miselowski, get us on Facebook Live, Morning Brew, where Morris is right now. G'day, Morris. How are you?
Hey, it's so wonderful to see you.
I know. Last time it was down the beach and the wind.
A real thing. Maybe we should call it television.
Do you know what, Morris? That's not.
It'll never catch on.
That's not a bad idea at all. Is this your COVID setup? Because you're looking really slick there today.
Yeah, this is the office, the bunker back home.
Yeah, not bad at all. So, what's been happening, Morris? I've been away. James has been looking after things wonderfully, and I'm sure you've had some good chats. What kind of ground did you cover with James? Anything that I need to know?
So we talked a lot about jobs and where COVID was going to take us in that job front. We had a look at security last week too, and this notion of the apps and things that we're going to have that lots of us are going to be asked to use, and whether that was a safe thing to do or not. And you know what I came out with, because it's my usual line every week, Phil. Niceness and evilness, niceness and evilness. It has a purpose now. But for me, it needs to have a grandfather clause, meaning a sunset clause, meaning that at some point they've got to be able to turn it off and assure us nobody's looking at us anymore.
It's not going to happen, though, is it?
I don't know, because in Australia we're kind of being educated, which is a nice way of saying the press is talking about it more and more, and so is our Prime Minister, that we're going to have this app given to us, and we need 40% of the population to have it on their mobile device, or it's useless. And they're saying, without legislation yet, but they're promising that it will have a sunset clause. When we're over this, whenever that thing is, they're going to turn it all off and everything will disappear.
Sunset clause. Explain that a bit. What other examples of that, perhaps?
Means at some point, somewhere down the track, that it will disappear, like sunset.
Yeah.
And so they're promising us at this stage, without it being in legislation, that at some point when we reach whatever it is that we have to reach, they'll turn it all off and nobody else will be able to spy on us. But I think it doesn't really matter, Phil. We need to have it so we can get back outside.
Yeah, he's going to say, they're not going to spy on us anymore. Okay, then. No, of course, no worries.
There's a million ways they can spy on us. Really, they don't need this. I mean, it's so silly to say this is going to be it. They're spying on us anyway.
Yeah. I want to bring up a quote that Morris, you can read about this on his website and everything, which I'm sure you'll find out about in a second. Morris gave me a very gloomy quote this morning.
Oh.
In fact, have you got it there? Here we are.
Which gloomy fact?
It was something the about, we've changed and we're never going back and all that stuff.
Which quote, Phil, sorry?
So you wrote it, Morris.
I know, but I was talking over you, so I don't know which one you picked.
All right, here we go. It says, the person we were pre-COVID-19 has gone forever. And with it, the hopes, aspirations and dreams of the future self we might have become. And I read that on your website, Morris, so you better tell us.
And it's what I said. It's so melodramatic. It's wonderful. But it's true, Phil, because we all had a vision of who we were going to be. We never saw this fork in the road coming. And everything we thought about ourselves was based on it never being here. Yeah. So who we were at work, how we were going to live, who we were going to love, where we were going to go for restaurants and holidays, all that was part of our life. It was who we thought we were going to be at some future point. And all of a sudden, this thing COVID came along and it took us down a detour, and we've had to become somebody very different. So lots of us are at home now. We're not necessarily doing the satisfying work that we might have otherwise done. We're not going out and enjoying the sunlight or whatever else we would have done. So we've had to become a different sort of person. And lots of people I'm talking to down the track are very worried for who they might be afterwards. Will they have a job? Will the family be safe? All those kind of negative questions, which are really part of living through this angst.
It's almost like a bit out of taste to talk about the positive side of things. I mean, quite understandably so. But instead of this, how about we say something along the lines of, is it a test? And how well are we doing if it is?
Yeah, look, I don't mind that at all. But really, the purpose of that was a webinar we did last night.
Yeah.
It's a series of webinars every Monday night in Australia. And your listeners are more than welcome to join me next Monday night. What we talk about really are positive things, Phil, because that's really where my head takes me.
Yeah.
So to me, it was an opportunity really for us to press reset and reboot. It's horrible what's happened to us. We don't want to ever have happened, nor do we want it again. But let's take this opportunity to rethink who we are.
It sounds a bit blasé to say reboot. I'm sure everybody listening and watching knows what you mean, but we have to watch our language right now, don't we?
We do, but I actually think it is an opportunity to do that. And we had a psychologist on last night. We had Judith David on. She spoke to us for pretty much most of the hour, looking at exactly that. She was talking about the notion that we have really, in many ways, been stripped back to a human in a way that we've not ever had it in any of our living memories. And that is that everything that we thought we were, everything we thought we could achieve no longer is possible. And we're often waiting now at the behest of somebody else. So we're waiting for a government department to tell us we can do it. We're waiting for something else. So our lives are very, very different. We talked about the notion of maybe taking some of the good stuff out of what's happening to us and moving forward with that as part of a future self. By that, it was my example, and I'm sure it's happening in Hong Kong, but can't get there, can't tell you, you'll tell me. Sure. But in Victoria, in St Kilda, when we go for our daily walks, there are so many people walking around saying hello to each other.
That's the stuff I'm on about,
people are literally walking in the slow lane. They're literally, taking that deep breath. They're stopping, they're talking, they're playing with their kids, they've reformatted their lives. It's not that 9 to 5 anymore. Kids are becoming important in a different way.
But there's one thing missing with all of these things, Morris, and that's people's incomes. Across the board, they're losing out big time.
Yeah, and we know that, Phil. I mean, again, I'm not for a moment saying any that's not real. But what we have also in that, guys, is a government in Australia and lots of places around the world that have agreed to subsidise wages. And they're giving people all sorts of income to be able to sustain them. It's not a great deal of money, but it's something. Now, that's interesting because you and I have spoken over the years about this notion of, can we give people what's called a universal wage? Yeah. Should the government, in fact, give everybody enough money to live off, regardless of who they are and what they do? And everybody's always said no.
Why? Why? It's like nothing for nothing or something. Is it one of those?
Yeah, and that's usually it. One is because we'll go economically broke. Well, we're not going to. It'll be difficult, but we will come over it. I'm talking about Australia specifically. Yeah. We will overcome this. It will take us years, but we will do it. So the going broke thing doesn't work. It was really the social inequity that many people believe, look, you've got to work for it. There aren't any handouts in life. You just got to work.
I was about to say Victorian. I mean, it is a very Victorian notion.
Victoria, so it's Victorian. No. Of course it is. But that's the notion of what happens in most of our life. I mean, as much as we don't want to agree with it, Phil, that's the way many, many people in our capitalist world see it. So I'm fascinated to see how quickly we've all taken on board, and I think rightly so, I think it's a great thing we did, how quickly we've all taken on board this universal wage. The other thing that really tickles my fancy is the fact that we have become a martial law. I mean, in Australia, we have martial law. The government literally overnight has become a dictator for the right reasons, often doing the right things, and we'll debate for years whether it was or it wasn't, but it seems to be okay for the moment, bringing in all sorts of laws which literally are locking us back into our homes.
Does this bring up the conversation of democracy then?
Yeah, absolutely. So all these things that we once thought were sacrosanct, they were things we could never talk about, things that were always part of our life that were the structure and the fabric, and you didn't have to worry about them because they were. Now all of a sudden aren't anymore. And it's really interesting to see the big debates on these types of issues. It wouldn't happen before, Phil. So for me, what I'm really hoping, is that not that we'll go to universal wage, not that we'll continue to be a martial law, but that we'll take some elements of the good stuff out of this, and we might mix it in to a future world.
Take us through a little bit of what went down last night. I mean, any particular angles from your guests, for instance, that you went, oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it was. We talked about what it was, and we talked about the notion of many people get their self-worth from their work. Okay. So if you ask them who they are, the first thing they tell you is, I'm a broadcaster, I'm a futurist, I'm a plumber, I'm a landscaper, whatever it is, and that defines them. Yeah. At the moment, that's not true. Most people can't say that with any certainty, and if they do, it still makes them feel uncertain. So Judith talked about the notion of really understanding ourselves and using this time to get really comfortable with us.
Defining us, Morris, is a very interesting one, because certainly where we are, to be frank, a lot of people define themselves by the four wheels they sit upon and the four walls they live within.
Yeah. So she gave us a really good insight, and I love it, and I'm going to plagiarise it. So she didn't say this, I said it, but truthfully, I pinched it from her. She said, really, what we are as a human who we are as a human is not what we are. And we have to get those two things really distinct, because the what is the job title, the what is the driver of that Lamborghini or whatever the car is. Yeah. And she said, at times like this, all the what falls away. All we're left with is who. And we have to get really comfortable with who we are. And from a psychologist's viewpoint, She said that one of the most difficult things she sees and has in her many, many years of practice is that most of us feel uncomfortable with ourselves. We're not used to being by ourselves. We're not used to being alone. And she thought this was a particularly good period for us to get a bit more comfortable with not being by ourselves as in one-on-one, but actually getting comfortable with ourselves as not being that, whatever that title is, or the driver of that car.
Hang on a second, Morris. Let me invite people to join us on Facebook Live if they can. Morning Brew. Interesting conversation from Morris this morning, and this is where you can just put your thoughts and feelings if you want. Basically, we're sort of saying how are things really going to be different, and I'm not even going to say when and if, because that's a tricky topic as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Morris, give us a key thing to perhaps get our listeners going. What would you say is a key thing to consider before they give us maybe their point of view?
So it really comes back to me is understanding your core. What makes you joyful and happy? And don't make it a job title. It's what makes you get up in the morning. I mean, really, it is what makes you get up in the morning. If you won that mythical Tats Lotto or the Tats or whatever it's called in Hong Kong, in other words, if you won $1 squillion and didn't have to work again, most of us would still want to do something to be active. Yeah, what is it you would want to do then? And we're not going out to find that or to win that mythical money, although that would be great. It really is going back to the core of who we are. The other thing she said, and we've heard it in lots of movies and things, but I like the way she phrased it and the way she put it into context, was that you're enough. That the answer to the question is whoever you are and whatever you do, and she said me. So, me is always enough. That's all I need to be. Me is always enough. And me is a progression. Me changes through life. So I'm giving maybe I should start charging for her psychological advice.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Morris, because I must talk about money here. A lot of people are being hit really hard. Freelancers of the world, whatever business they're in, they're really getting slammed with all this stuff. Are we starting now to talk about money as a necessity rather than a vanity?
I think we're starting to see it as that. I'm not sure it is, because it goes back to the previous, that if we hold the value of everybody getting a universal income, then money almost becomes immaterial. Everybody has it. Everybody has access to enough. Now, I know that's a silly comment. It's not well thought out. It's not meant to be, but it's part of that esoteric conversation that people have had forever since we were put on this earth. The different regimes, the different ways we look at the planet, different ways we divide up what we have on this planet. This is a really interesting time to be talking about all those things, because everything we thought was so certain just isn't anymore.
So as humans, let's be honest, we tend to be reactive because we're perhaps lazy. We don't go to the doctor unless something hurts. And doctors have said time and time again, well, if you came to us before, it might not hurt. We're going with that. So we've been forced to be reactive now. This is not just like, whatever, I'll forget about it. We can't.
No, you can't. You're absolutely part of it, whether you want to be or not. I mean, you can be one of those protesters around the world that say it's all nonsense and we shouldn't be social isolating and the rest of it. But the reality is most of us on the planet have bought into this. We actually think it is a real pandemic. We think there really are issues. And we are all, for whatever reason, better or worse, part of this journey. The other thing, and again, I seem to be quoting Judith a lot.
No, it's great.
The other thing she said to us last night was that even though we're all in it together, she actually got quite heated about this, and I liked it because it was something I hadn't thought of before. Even though we're all in this, and we keep hearing all this dribble, in the media and everywhere else, and we're part of this, we're all in this together. She said, in fact, we're not. We're all individual humans. What we're doing is responding to the same thing, but every one of us is individual, and the way that we're responding to it is 100% correct for me, not for anybody else. So some people might be overplaying something or be overly concerned about something. That doesn't make them wrong. It makes them them.
This is fascinating. There's so many angles to what you're talking about. I'm finding it hard to put it all together. I want to be able to say a logical sentence, but I can't. But everything you're saying is ringing true, Morris. It really is, or Judith said.
Yeah. So again, go back. I mean, we were on air last night for an hour and 10 minutes. Okay. So it's eyeonthefuture.com. In the media is the section, and you can rewatch last night's. And the one before that, last Monday's, was about jobs in COVID as well. But last night you'll be able to watch Judith. So again, businessfuturist.com. In the media is the tab you want, and you'll see it there. But I liked it because it gave us some really homely advice, which is really what we need at this time. Yeah. It wasn't high level. It was just really sincere, from the gut conversations. If you want to go further, and this is a concept I'd never heard of before, she said that humans have 5 personality types, and it's by the acronym of OCEAN, OCEAN, OCEAN. So according to the personality type that we have, speaks a lot about the way that we're going to react to COVID and react to other things in life. So I've done some research since, and she told us what ocean is, but it stands for this. It's openness to experience is the O, openness to experience. Conscientiousness is the C. Extroversion is the E. Agreeableness is the A. And N is neuroticism. Ocean. And apparently it's a psychological tool that's been around forever and ever. It's how they quickly evaluate. It's like triage. It's a quick evaluation of the mental state of somebody. And what she was saying was, depending on which one of those personality types you're more often in, because we all move depending on situation, but more often will really depend on how vastly important this thing will be, how catastrophic it will be, or whether it's an opportunity. In other words, if you're open to experience, the O in oceanness, then this is just an opportunity. You're just looking at it exactly like that. If you are neurotic, which is the N, the other side, then of course everything about this is going to be catastrophic. Everything about this is going to be wrong. So from her viewpoint, that's why she said it's really about me as a human. It's not about all these other things. It's how do I react to it. And she gave us this really interesting tool of Ocean, which you can Google, OCEAN.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a thing, or is it one?
Yeah. It's been around for 40, 50 years. I've not come across it before. Yeah. Psychological piece of theory that's been well taught, well researched for a very long period of time. And it's a really quick way, apparently, that psychologists, psychiatrists have used to quickly be able to assess people before they do a lot of in-depth work. And it does give you, I've looked at it quite a lot since last night, it does give you a really good insight into how we might approach things.
Yeah, there are a couple of very well-known tests, I suppose. This product has got to be a test for this.
There's a test for everything.
There's a test for everything. Let's talk about some generalizations.
There's not enough tests for COVID. That's the only thing there isn't enough tests of.
How ironic, Norris. Let's talk about generalizations. We're talking about things like resetting. People are saying the world is resetting. I was talking to a couple of very sort of hot conservationist guys this morning. I said the water looks cleaner. And Gary said to me, I think you might be imagining it. But maybe I am imagining it, but it seems cleaner to me.
Yeah, so your openness to experience then in the ocean. You're the O-type. I mean, Judith is right. What can I tell you?
Morris, if you were talking to a bunch of sick formers, for instance, and this thing about reset came up, where would you take that conversation?
So when I get the opportunity to do that, and I've had it already, I talk to them about the reality that they know and people my age have difficulty with, and that is that their world will constantly change, that they will never have to worry about being stuck in doing something for 20 or 30 or 40 years. They'll be using a myriad of skills, and that they always need to be open to opportunity. They always need to see and find their own way. And this period for them really illustrates that really well, because the rest of the world that have been so used to things being predictable day in, day out, are now learning that lesson that kids know so well.
Social media and anybody over 40 would probably have you think that it's a slap in the face for millennials, who are lazy and self-entitled, apparently.
Oh, look, I don't agree with that. I think every generation is. I mean, every single generation. The Beatles were given to us by the devil incarnate. They were taking us all to hell. I mean, every generation says that of every other generation, Phil. And it goes back to Socrates and all the way back.
Yeah. All right, Morris, we've just got a couple of minutes left. So this webinar, it really sounds like people should watch it. Tell us slowly and clearly anything you want our listeners to go and check out.
So the past two are at businessfuturist.com. You can watch them at your leisure. Next Monday, I've just been confirmed. You actually are the first to know this. We have a huge company in Australia called Seek.com.
Yeah.
They are an employment agent. They are an online employment space. Their CEO, Paul Bassett, is joining us next Monday night, and we're going to be talking how to get ready to apply for jobs during and after COVID. He's going to talk to us about the jobs that are currently on his site, what companies are looking for right now, and how to prepare ourselves. So resumes, job interviews, and all those sorts of things is next Monday night.
Well, the cynics will say he's wasting his time. I hope he's not.
He's not. There will be jobs, of course there will be, and we will move into a new space. There's a whole new way, well, not a whole new way. There will be a different way of approaching this. And Paul is the best person to tell us that. It's the largest employment site in Australia, Australasia, actually.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, a lot of people whose jobs weren't so well known now are. I mean, they may not be getting paid at all or very much at all for doing them, but we're talking about performers and people like that.
Hey, welcome to my life.
Welcome to Morris's life. When you left yesterday, I was going to say when you left the room virtually, what were you thinking, Morris? Okay, take away.
that it was dinner time and I was really hungry. Was my first
takeaway.
But it was that notion around me, and I really like the point that we've talked about already, that even though we keep hearing this well-trotted phrase that we're all in this together,
Yeah.
her comment that we really aren't. We're individuals responding to the same sort of circumstance, and that makes it valid. But it also means that we have some control over the way that we approach what we have to do.
Fantastic, Morris. Really fascinating stuff, and there's tons more to talk about as the weeks go by, I'm sure. And as when things do tend to possibly ease off, I wonder if you're going to change your tune. Once again, Morris, tell our viewers and listeners where they can catch out your webinars.
So it's businessfuturist.com. Past ones are in the media. You'll see the tab there. And I'll put up a link there tomorrow when it opens up for next Monday nights.
Brilliant. I'll talk to you next week, Morris. It's always
Look forward to
fascinating to talk to you.
Have
Morris,
a good one.
Bye-bye. Morris Miselowski there on the line from Melbourne. Well, it's nearly time for the news, so let's do this.
Radio 3 weather.
Hot and sunny this afternoon, mainly